Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today we're taking a look at another brand new set of cards that have just been revealed from the Japanese set Storm Emeralda. That's going to be our Delta Rain set. We've got 11 or 12 cards to go through today. I can't remember how many we've got, but we're kicking things off with this Mega Golisopod EX, a 340 HP grass type. It's a stage 1. Obviously, being a Mega, it gives up 3 prizes, and it's got 2 attacks. Finishing Blow for 60 damage for 1 Grass Energy. It deals an additional 160 damage if your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it. So that's pretty good. 220 for 1 is obviously really good at dealing with all of the 2-prize Pokemon like the bench hitters like Fez and Latias and all of that kind of stuff. So that's pretty good. Obviously, the most difficult question is how are we going to get damage counters onto our opponent's board, and immediately things like normal Frostlass, Monkey Dory, all of those kind of things come to mind. Obviously, this only being a grass energy and 1 energy cost means that we could play Crispin, so you could play Crispin, Monkey Dory, that kind of stuff with Frostlass and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can kind of see this not necessarily working in the same way as Grimmsnarl, but having like a similar engine to Grimmsnarl in that you'll have Frostlasses and Monkey Dories perhaps as your backup or as your bench sitting Pokemon while you've got Mega Golisopod in the active, dealing 220, which is really good. Being 1 energy as well means we can heal this potentially with something like Wally's Compassion, which is really nice. So yeah, you can make this thing pretty tanky. Fire isn't all that relevant right now. There's a couple of metal decks that are going to be coming out in the next set that may mean fire gets a little bit more popular, but I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue having weakness to fire. So yeah, we could make this thing pretty tanky, which is quite nice. In general, I don't really think this is going to be much better than Grimmsnarl, really. Even though Grimmsnarl's a stage 2, I feel like they benefit off the damage manipulation a little bit better. This isn't hitting like Mega numbers, for example. You're not able to KO Megas without weakness or anything like that, without some additional damage counters. You could actually play this with Dusknoir and Dusclops and that kind of thing as the way of getting damage onto the active to set up the additional damage for Finishing Blow as well. So maybe this could be paired with something like that. Dusknoir plus this would take you up to 350, so you are KOing anything. You do have to give up a prize to do so. But again, Mega Golisopod is so low maintenance, being a 1 energy attacker on a stage 1. It's pretty nice to be able to... you should have like quite a lot of space to be able to play what you want with it. So yeah, I definitely can see this being like an interesting potential rogue option. Like I say, nothing like blows me away about this card. Its second attack, Quattro Hold for 3 colorless energy, does 160, and during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. That's not too good. 3 for 160 isn't great. Can't retreat is okay, but like we've seen a lot of retreat locking attacks do well over the past few months in at like various different tournaments in various different stages, and we've seen how powerful they can be, but this one's a really expensive one. Yes, you could use like Ignition Energy maybe to power this up, but overall I don't think it's ever really going to be worth investing into Quattro Hold, especially given that it's only 160 damage, so it's not like it's it's KOing the non-EX stuff, so you're not trapping them. I guess you are two-shotting some of the like Megas and stuff like that, but even so, it's just not too efficient. So if anything, you're going to be building around this card for the Finishing Blow attack, and yeah, definitely some options for some Frostlass, some Monkey Dory stuff, maybe some Dusknoir stuff, all that kind of all the usual stuff you kind of expect to see in decks like this that like damage counter manipulation. Worth noting, the Wimpod does have the Punk Out ability that says if your opponent has any Pokemon EX in play, this Pokemon's retreat cost is 0, so that's obviously really nice. Hopefully giving this thing free retreat against a lot of matchups. There are obviously a fair few decks that play EXs right now, and the more we see bench-sitting EXs like Meowth and Fez and Latias and stuff like that, often Latias, Meowth come out quite early, so you can hopefully be able to... I guess retreat out for free if you do end up starting this Wimpod, which is quite nice. It's not quite as good as that original Wimpod that had the Wimp Out ability that just gave it free retreat on the first turn of the game, but this is still it's like a nice additional little bit of like resource to have on your Wimpods as well. We've got a new Cacturne, which is pretty interesting. 130 HP grass type. It's got linear attack, which the attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Obviously, this is kind of meant to be paired with the Golisopod. You use the Cacturne. You can obviously do this turn 1, or I guess, sorry, turn 2. but you can set this up in one turn with the Forest of Vitality, so you can't do it turn one, but you can set this up in one turn. You don't have to wait to evolve like you do with normal grass types, so you can use linear attack to set up your opponent's bench and like pick off or deal 30 damage to whatever they're going to be sending up, so that Mega Golisopod in the future can deal a huge amount of damage with Finishing Blow. So like that's kind of the vision here, but I actually think the more interesting attack is the Punishing Needle attack. For 1 grass energy, you deal 10 damage, and you deal 50 more damage for each Pokemon in your opponent's board that has an ability. So this is exactly the same as that Ultra Prism Weavile we saw way back in the day. That was a really, really powerful tech card in certain decks. This multiplier, this 50 multiplier racks up quite quickly, which is really nice. The only thing I will say is Weavile was being played at a time when the HP bar was a lot lower. So I don't think Cacturne is going to be quite as powerful or quite as impactful, if that makes sense, because you can still hit the 210 ranges, and 210 was kind of a number that was relevant for Weavile. So 210 is like still a pretty good number to be hitting again on the Fezzes, the Latties, all of that kind of stuff. But it's going to rarely be getting a big KO on like an attacking Pokemon or a Mega or anything like that a lot of the time. Whereas the Weavile could do that. So it is a bit worse than Weavile, just purely based on like the meta it's in and the format we're in and the HP growth that we've had since Ultra Prism. But I still think this is like quite a nice attack, and there's plenty of abilities going right now. Whenever you have a format which doesn't have ability lock, abilities just run rampant, and whilst this isn't ability lock, this could be a way of punishing some of those ability decks, which is quite nice. So yeah, definitely an interesting one. I don't think it's going to be as impactful as Weavile. But it could be a splashable option, especially in some grass decks, to be able to deal like a huge amount of damage with a single prize Pokemon. That's kind of where we saw Weavile in the past, and that's where I could potentially see Cacturne coming up in the future as well. We've got Wishiwashi EX. It's a basic 260 HP water type. Obviously, pretty comparable to some of the other big water types we have like right now, like Wailord and stuff like that. But this is a basic, which is quite nice. It's got the Ocean Gain ability that says you may use this ability once during a turn if this Pokemon is in the active spot, and you heal 50 damage from this Pokemon. And then just a vanilla Hydro Splash, 220 damage for 4 energy. So there's a couple of interesting things about this card. We'll talk about a card later on that makes your healing a little bit better, which is quite nice. And having 260 HP means that you are quite tanky for a 2-prize Pokemon compared to some of the other 2-prize Pokemon about. Again, you know, things like Mewtwo and stuff like that have seen success sometimes purely because of how big they are, and 260 HP is pretty difficult to deal with in one shot for some decks, which is quite nice. I don't think the heal of 50 is really impactful enough to get you out of 2-shot range, though. A lot of the time, decks are going to be doing, like, I guess you need to do, like, what you can easily 2-shot this thing even through the 50 heal. A lot of the time you only need to be doing like 160 damage to be able to 2-shot this thing, so it's not like that good at healing out of range. We do have Misty to be able to power this up in a turn, which is quite nice, but again, 220 for 4 isn't that impressive. There's a little bit of like there's a couple of things worth noting to do with the healing later on that could be worth like thinking about a little bit, but I think overall this is just going to be too weak. It's too vanilla, and even with some of the healing effects that we're going to talk about later on, I don't think this is really going to be worth building around overall. We've got a Sableye that has the Lure Out attack. It has 80 HP. It's a dark type, and it has this Lure Out attack that says reveal the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck. You may choose any number of basic Pokemon you find that and put them onto your bench, and your opponent shuffles the other cards back into their deck. So this is basically the flute, the flute item on an attack, which is quite nice. I could see this being played in some instances where maybe you're playing a control deck that uses dark energy. You could use this instead of using the flute, but I think accompanying flute is probably better overall because it's an item card. It doesn't take up your attack for the turn. You don't have to play this low HP basic down or dark energy specifically if you're not already playing them. So I think in general this is just worse than the flute, but it is worth keeping in mind for some like milling or control strategies in general. For if they're using dark energy, this is obviously just another tool to the tool belt. We've got a Mega Malamar EX. It's got 320 HP for a Stage 1 Mega Pokemon, which again is kind of where we're expecting. It's got 2 attacks. The first is Psychic Marionettes for 2 Dark Energy. It does 70 damage times the number of benched Pokemon your opponent has. So that's actually a pretty strong multiplier. There's plenty of decks that go quite wide on the board right now, and being able to do like I think 280 is a pretty reasonable minimum this is going to be doing. There'll be situations where it's doing less, but I think you can reasonably expect this to be doing 280 quite a lot of the time, which for 2 energy is pretty impressive. We don't have great dark support right now outside of things like Toxtricity. You could play Toxtricity with this. It does make you a little bit more fragile. You go down to a 300 HP Pokemon if you're powering up this with Toxtricity. But even so, it could be that's probably our best way of being able to accelerate energy to this. So yeah, I could see this seeing an amount of play. I don't think it's going to be crazy good, but I think the multiplier is pretty strong. The thing about this is it doesn't, like, whilst this attack feels quite good, it doesn't feel like this is, I don't know what else you're necessarily doing to be able to, like, leverage this any more than just any other, like, relatively efficient damage attacker. Things like Grimmsnarl can do damage counter manipulation. Things like Zoroark can win in a turn and stuff like that. Absol has some hand disruption. I don't really feel like this is just damage, which is sometimes is okay. Sometimes decks that just do damage are really good, but I don't think this is really like broken enough. You can sort of play around it as your opponent as well a little bit. It's still pretty hard. 70 times is very, very high. So it can be quite difficult to play around. But yeah, it feels a little bit too weak, I think, overall. The attack is very powerful, and the attack itself isn't necessarily weak, but I think the deck concept in general just feels like it doesn't have a huge amount of selling points. And then similarly, Eerie Pulse for 200, dealing for 3 Dark Energy, dealing 200 and confusing the opponent's active Pokemon. We now have that new Dark Bell card that's coming out in Pitch Black, so there's not really any reason to be playing this, like, or to be leaning into this Eerie Pulse. You can just play Dark Bell instead. A lot of the time, Psychic Marionette is going to be doing more damage anyway for, they only need to have 3 Pokemon on their bench to be able to do more damage than Eerie Pulse, so I don't think you're ever really going to be using this second attack. So yeah, it's an interesting card. I don't think it's powerful enough purely because I don't think it does enough stuff outside of just dealing damage, and it's on a stage 1, and it's kind of an awkward attack cost. Again, we have Toxtricity, but it's not a great energy acceleration, especially when it can only accelerate to the bench. There are some decent dark tools around right now, but I think we have enough other dark type support for a Toxtricity box with Absol, with maybe even Darkrai is better than this, and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think this is quite good enough. It's a very, very powerful attack, but I don't think the peripherals around the attack are like really strong enough to make it worth it. Got a new item card, the Yummy Onigiri. This is an item card that says heal 30 damage from your active Pokemon, and then you heal 30 more for each Yummy Onigiri in the discard pile. So these get better and better and better. The first one heals 30, second 60, third 90, and the fourth 120 if you do manage to play all 4 in a game. That's quite a lot of healing, to be honest. It obviously ramps up, and it takes a little while to make this comparable to Jumbo Ice Cream. Obviously, Jumbo Ice Cream heals 80, but it heals 80 initially. But you do need to have 3 energy on your active Pokemon that you're healing. So, yeah, this doesn't have that restriction. And I could actually see this seeing some amount of play in decks that typically would play like a high count of Jumbo Ice Cream. There's some decks that can't play Jumbo Ice Cream because of the 3 energy requirement, but still have this like tanky strategy about them. So I think this could potentially see play in some tanky decks instead of Jumbo Ice Cream, or in the decks that can't play Jumbo Ice Cream. I think if you're able to play that, like, the first one's not great, the second one's okay, the third and fourth are fantastic heal though. That's like as much as a hyper potion, without having to discard an energy from your active Pokemon. So yeah, it's pretty good. The only thing that makes me like a little bit more concerned about this is obviously if you're not playing Jumbo Ice Cream, that means you're typically playing a deck that has a lower energy attack cost, maybe 1 or 2. Well, if it's 1, you can easily just play, like, most of the time I can see this, like, really only being impactful enough on a Mega Pokemon, and you can just play Wally's Compassion instead, and then, like, reattach the energy. So I think this is a very, very powerful heal effect, but it has quite a niche use in that it probably only is useful on tanky Mega decks that use exactly 2 energy to attack, say Malamar, for example. I don't think this makes Malamar good. But yeah, so it has quite a niche effect. So I think it's quite a powerful effect when you hit the third and the fourth copies, but you need to be playing quite a specific deck to be able to do this. So Yeah, I don't think this is going to be crazy good. I think I can see this potentially seeing play in like a really specific archetype that fits those niches that only plays that can't play Wally and can't play Jumbo Ice Cream. I think this is a very powerful effect for exactly that type of deck, but I don't know that we have that type of deck in format right now. We have the Custom Vest, which is a tool card that says the Pokemon this card is attached to, excluding any Mega Pokemon EX, takes 60 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Mega Pokemon EX. So this is a minus 60 on anything that's non-Mega from Megas, which is quite nice. There are a few Megas around right now, but I don't think there's necessarily enough Megas, or I don't think Megas are making enough of an impact in the format right now for this to be worth playing. This definitely screams at me as like a one-of in a controlling archetype or a walling archetype, just for specific matchups. It's definitely going to see play in those kinds of situations, but I don't think we have like a big enough pool of Megas that are seeing play right now that makes it worth playing in anything other than like a controlling archetype. I think there's going to be plenty of decks that just get around this, Still, we always talk about it, but Dragapult still being the most powerful deck means that there's like already 25-30% of the meta maybe is just going to be ignoring this anyway. So yeah, I think it's pretty niche for anything outside of those like controlling or walling strategies. But I do think it's pretty good for those. A minus 60 is very, very impressive. And again, when you can then use some healing at the same time, like after that as well, you can seriously reduce or increase the number of turns it's going to take your opponent to knock out your Pokemon. So yeah, just going to be one that I think sits in the binder, especially until we have some of these other non-Mega decks rotate. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near impactful enough in like the meta overall, but I can definitely see this seeing play as a one or a two of in some kind of controlling strategy, just because that's kind of exactly where these cards fit. We have Aarune. This is a new supporter card that says search your deck for up to 3 supporter or stadium cards in any combination, reveal them and put them into your hand and shuffle your deck. So obviously you can already see we've got a brand new split stadium that was revealed today, but we have the Legendary Summit as well from the previous reveals, and this is kind of our enabler, right? This is how we're going to try and pull those stadium cards together. You can search for 2 stadiums, the 2 halves of the stadium that you need to put into play, plus a supporter for the following turn, which is pretty nice. And I think for serving that purpose, this card is fantastic. It's really good at being able to pull those cards into your hand, get them into play when you need them, and set yourself up for the following turn, so you don't really you're not going all in on this supporter and then not having anything to do on the following turn. You're searching out your supporter for the following turn as well. So that's really, really nice. However, I still don't see a reason for us to play some of these split stadiums purely because there's no counterplay. There's so much counterplay to them. Your opponent can just play one stadium and bounce both, and it's going to be really difficult to have them stick in play. So I think even with this enabler, the split stadiums just aren't really going to be powerful enough because there's no way of stopping your opponent bouncing them. I do still believe we may see something like that in this set, but until we do see something like that, I don't think it's worth playing the stadiums, and therefore I don't think it's worth playing this card. That being said, we do have another split stadium here, the Legendary Trench that was revealed, that says when a Pokemon in play is healed, both yours or your opponent's, you double the amount of healing you double the amount of HP that is healed. So this is the card that I was referring to earlier on, that you can play with the Wishiwashi. You can even see the Wishiwashi down here in the actual card art. I love looking at these. There's so many cool Pokemon. There's a Jellicent right there. In this one, we've got a Mantine and a Mantike, some Wattrolls flying around. These cards look incredible, but unfortunately, I don't think this one, similarly to the Summit, I don't think this is going to be powerful enough. This is at least an active effect, so when you play this down, you can then heal and immediately get benefit from it. And in some cases, I think healing double double the amount you're trying to can be enough to wipe off a turn from the opponent. That could be really powerful. Imagine playing this down and then playing, with 1 Jumbo Ice Cream, you're healing 160. With 2 Jumbo Ice Creams, you're healing 320. You can completely reset an opponent's damage with that, which is very powerful. So I do think that makes this one slightly better than the Legendary Summit, because this is an active effect rather than a passive effect that you can activate on your turn rather than giving your opponent the opportunity to bounce it. Even though I think the Legendary Summit has a more powerful effect in a vacuum, I think just with the nature of how these stadiums work and the fact that these stadiums are so powerful, or it's so easy to counter them, or it's so impactful to counter them, that it's much better for this to be on like an effect that you can activate as soon as you put it down. So yeah, this effect is worse than the other one, but better in terms of the like how the game works. But still, I don't think doubling the amount of HP you heal is worth trying to get this convoluted 2-piece stadium into play. Again, if we can get to the point where we have a way of being able to make these stadiums stick and it makes it difficult for your opponent to bounce them, sure, I can see both of these potentially seeing some play. But right now, we still haven't seen anything that leads me to believe that we're going to be able to reliably get these into play and get multiple benefits off of them. Again, this is definitely better than the other Legendary Summit one in terms of being able to definitely get a proc from this. You can just wait until you've got some healing to do and then play this down. But overall, I still don't think this is going to be worth it. So 2 for 2 on, I think, underwhelming split stadiums right now. But we still have space for one more, so I'm still expecting one more split stadium to be revealed, and hopefully we are able to see some kind of ability or, maybe a supporter card or an item card or something like that that prevents any stadiums from being able to be bounced on the following turn to maybe try and really get some benefit out of these split stadiums. So, yeah. Pretty interesting stuff. Nothing quite as impactful, I don't think, as the Mega Rayquaza that was revealed a couple of weeks ago. But I'm still loving seeing these split stadiums. I really hope we get like nice holofoil prints of these and stuff like that. They're going to look fantastic in a binder. And, we'll definitely be trying to make them work on stream and stuff like that. So, yeah, make sure you let me know what you think of the cards down below. Like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And, yeah, really look forward to seeing you guys. Let me know what you think of these brand new cards. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon.